Rear Admiral Mike Smith is founder and president of National Security Leaders for America, and he does not particularly care for this new rule. He joins us on MetroNews Talkline. Mike, good morning. Thanks for joining us.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
So, on one hand, I could understand why you would need to tightly control information in the Pentagon. On the other, I don't like the idea of the state authorizing the release of information. So, maybe divergent thoughts there, but make this make sense for me, if you can.
You certainly can't make this policy make sense. There's always been a tension between the military and press. My organization has over 1,300 former senior national security leaders. We grew up understanding that tension and living with it. There's a reason we have a freedom of the press, but there's also a reason to allow our members to develop relationships, so you know which press you can trust and which you can't. So when there is a crisis and somebody comes to you and says, "Just give me this information so I can help you," you know who to trust. And this state-sanctioned oversight and only printing what the Pentagon wants to have printed, that's just dangerous.
Admiral, thanks for your service. I think you would agree that our founders did not want us to trust the government. That's not a pejorative statement. It's just the way we're set up. Is that effectively what Secretary Hegseth is asking us to do with this policy? Is he asking us to just trust him, us as Americans, to just trust him?
Absolutely. And that is, like you say, that's dangerous. I mean, if we just trusted what the press releases from the Pentagon, how would we be characterizing the Afghanistan withdrawal right now? Back years ago, Abu Ghraib and learning about the actions that were being done in this prison that the United States was in charge of, or going back to Vietnam, the Pentagon Papers. And if we just went by press releases, everything would always be great. And I'm not saying that happens every day, but you have to have the freedom of the press to report. And then, like I said, it's a tension, but it's a good tension, and we all learn to live with it. It's strength in trusting the press. It's insecurity to muzzle the press. And I don't think our country and our military should be insecure.
Admiral Mike Smith joining us. He's founder and president of National Security Leaders for America. How do you, or within the Pentagon, if you can pull the curtain back a little bit for us, how do you control the flow of information to make certain that national security, information that may compromise missions, where troops are, how do you make sure that's secure? How do you find this balance between information that needs to get out, information that reporters have to dig to get to, but also not compromising national security matters?
Right. Well, you don't learn that overnight. Before I made Admiral, I was the one of the senior special assistants to the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, and I would travel with him everywhere. And at that point in my career, I just been on ships and things like that, and I didn't trust the press, and I learned, don't talk to the press. I found it was the exact opposite. You want to talk to the press. You need to understand how to communicate and how not to communicate. And the press knows that too. I mean, they know they can't print stuff that's direct and irreparable harm. You can't publish, troop movements and things like that. But at the same time, you want to be able to have that communication so they can help you when you need them as well.
I want to move down into some of the other parts of this policy beyond just telling the press what they can and cannot print and threatening to pull their credentials if they print something that's, quote, unauthorized. Movements within the Pentagon. As Dave said, pull the curtain back a little bit. Are you advocating, or do you believe it's a good idea that a reporter should be able to go anywhere in the Pentagon they want? Is there some kind of sensible restriction in saying, okay, reporters can't be in these certain areas? How should that work?
Well, I think the current process works. If the press can't go anywhere they want, classified areas have you have to have a badge that allows you to swipe into that area. And certainly the press badges don't allow them access to sensitive areas. So they're only going and meeting people perhaps when they're having a coffee or they're having lunch or someone's going to invite them to their office to discuss something. So you don't want to keep those people in their offices. First of all, it makes it hard when you really want to get information to them. Now your senior leaders have to walk down to their office when they're in the middle of a very busy day. So there's benefits on both sides to be able to freely roam the Pentagon because they can't get into areas that they're not cleared to get into.
Admiral Mike Smith is joining us, founder and president of the group National Security Leaders for America. How is there a way to clamp down on leaks, make certain information is not getting out that's not supposed to get out without these restrictions to the press? Because we know information gets out, sometimes select information gets out that doesn't tell the entire story about whatever the subject may be. Is there a balance? That seems to be what we're looking for, is a balance here.
We are looking for a balance. And I think that the current system has that balance. I mean, every president has been plagued by leaks. This isn't unique. Even the President Trump just yesterday or the other day said, this is crazy. The press is going to find out. You can't restrict the press like this because at the end of the day, you're really only talking about restricting them in the Pentagon. And if somebody wants to leak information like the Pentagon Papers, they'll find, some garage somewhere and they'll hand over the papers there. So you have to work on leaks by going to the source and you have to educate individuals that, this is what classified information is and you can't talk to this. It's a constant struggle. When you're in the job, you are so frustrated that people don't understand that and talk to the press. But again, the press themselves learn what they can report and what they can't as well when it comes to that national security impact. But this isn't national security. This is unclassified information. It's only if some bureaucrat in the Pentagon agrees with what you're reporting, can you report on that? On basic unclassified information that our Constitution guarantees the right of the American people to hear about.
Talk to me about those that are still in leadership at the Pentagon, the top brass, if you will, that work for, report to, whether it's Secretary Hegseth or even into the White House. As a retired Navy admiral, you can speak your mind as you are today talking about this. I'm curious if you have any suspicions about what upper brass may think about this policy. And obviously it would be difficult for them to talk about it, but would they be in agreement with you, do you think?
I would just be speculating. But certainly if I were in those positions, you know, it's a lawful order, so they're going to go by that order and they're going to make sure that, any statements they make are approved through whoever the press police is in the Pentagon. But each of those senior leaders has spent 30, 40 years uh, under an oath to protect the Constitution, to defend the Constitution. And the First Amendment is freedom of speech and freedom of press. So certainly I believe all of them robustly believe we have to have a free press and you have to have free speech.
Admiral, before we let you go, what will it take to overturn this policy and reverse course?
I think that the president needs to pick up the phone and call Secretary Hegseth and say, this is really not in our best interest. Why are you doing this? The press, like he already said, the press is going to find out anyways. And all it makes us do is look insecure. It makes us look weak and it makes us look afraid of the press. And our military is not weak and is not insecure.
Admiral Mike Smith, founder and president of National Security Leaders for America. Thanks so much for the conversation this morning. We'll continue to follow this story.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
Absolutely.